Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Whitetail Rendezvous is pleased to announce a partnership with GoHunt.com. Who's GoHunt.com? Well, if you're a DIY hunter, you need the information at GoHunt.com/insider. Why? Because it provides 4,200 profiles, every unit, every species, and every season. Furthermore, they give in-depth analysis, interactive maps, unit access, and seasonal trends. Draws are very important, and they give you the most accurate information in the business. All this is available when you go to GoHunt.com/insider. Make sure you use promo code WR when you join Insider. You'll get a $50 gift card for GoHunt.com Gear Shop. Remember, when you become a member of GoHunt.com/insider, you're going to get a $50 gift card to Go Hunt Gear Shop. What's in the gear shop? The best gear that you can buy for hunting the West. All in all, if you're hunting out West in 2018, GoHunt.com/insider is where you need to be to get all the research information. When you use promo code WR, Whitetail Rendezvous receives a small commission from GoHunt.com. Welcome to another special episode, actually spring series with Whitetail Rendezvous. And tonight we're going to join up with Rackology. And we're going to talk about food plots, but maybe in a little bit different way because both Eric and Jason understand the business. Jason, a biologist, he's a teacher. He knows the stuff. As you see the Rackology logo, he came up with double helical drop tine. So Google that and figure out what the heck that is. And then Eric Fitzgerald has been agronomist for over 20 years in central Nebraska. So these guys know their stuff. Just like we've got a couple other guys coming on the show that are going to talk about, their companies and food plots and land management. But the whole series is built to educate you guys and gals about what you can do, what you should do, why you shouldn't do it, when you should do it. All those things wrapped in the food plots because food plots have just exploded. Even out west here, guys are putting food plots on public land for elk. They are. And good for the elk. It's going to make them healthier. But, it's easy to throw 25 pounds, of seed in your backpack and take a walk. Pretty easy to do that. Pretty easy to do that. And if you got a ranch, well, you've been feeding elk and deer and coyotes and antelope for a long time on your alfalfa. But having said all that, guys, welcome to the show, and it's going to be 3 segments. What are the 3 segments going to be developed? What did we decide how we're going to break it out tonight?
Well, I guess the first segment we were going to talk about, what is a food plot and do you need one? Then we were going to kind of get into, what are the different food plots that are available out there and what do they do for the land that you're either managing or hunting on or like to see wildlife on. And then the third, all the planning that goes into it and, that it's not just plan it and forget it. It's a 365 year-round devotion to making sure that your food plots take hold on the ground, and then they perform the way you want them to do to make you successful in whatever you're trying to do with the food plot.
So, guys, let's kick off food plots with Rackology, presented by Whitetail Rendezvous, Part 1.
All right. Well, first thing we always get answered is, or get questions on that we try to answer is, hey, do you think a food plot's going to help? I've got a little 20-acre patch of ground, and I got people that hunt on both sides. Is it worthwhile for me to put money into doing a food plot if they have not had one there before? And I guess our answer is always yes, if it's something that's economical and your soils can hold a nice food plot and it can be successful. We talked earlier in the other stuff about the planning and all the work that goes into, land management. And so, when we take it from there, we've talked to this person and we've looked at it and we've determined, yes, 99% of the time, ground can benefit from a food plot. A food plot could be as the name implies, that puts groceries there for the wildlife, whether it be white-tailed deer, mule deer, pheasants, turkeys. And it also, on the second side, the other side of food plots can act as, cover. Whether it be for any of those species, it could act as sanctuary. It could act as their kitchen and their bedroom in the one area, and makes them feel a little more secure, a little less pressured. So, and again, it draws them in. And if that's what you're looking for, especially when it comes to whitetail deer, is draw those deer in during hunting season, then food plots are a huge tool that you could utilize and be a more successful hunter.
Yeah, and like we were talking a little bit before, off air or whatever, when obviously when people hear us say, yeah, I think, you definitely benefit from a food plot. I can definitely see people saying, yeah, of course you guys sell this stuff. Of course you'd say yes. But here's kind of my take on it. And, this is before we even did this business. I don't care if you've got a ton of acres or you've just got a few. And I'm thinking of one particular individual that literally has like 30 to 40 acres, and they are in between two big landowners. And in the past, the majority of the time, the deer stayed on the landowner's, perimeter, used his place as a travel corridor, and he shot decent deer, but he never really seen as many deer as he would like. He wasn't able to keep them on his property because it was small, like I said, 30 to 40 acres. And, he's a little skeptical at first, what am I going to benefit from? I'm really not going to benefit from feeding like a mineral or a whatnot unless I get the neighbors in on it, because they'll just shoot what I've done. So what would a food plot do for me? So, not only is the food plot going to help nutrition wise with your deer, and by the way, you can do a food plot so cheap compared to, if you're actually trying to feed deer, like a mineral or an actual feed. And, what we're able to do with a small acre like that is plant food plots that are going to bring the deer in to feed, plant sanctuary plots that are going to give them a bedding area. Because if you give them a bedding area, and they've got a food source and they've got water nearby, you're going to start holding your, deer on your property, even though it might only be a few acres. Not only that, if the deer are passing through your property and you've got just a few acres, you're going to be able to control now where those deer are coming through your property, going to the other neighbors. So regardless of how big or how small your property is, that's the reason why you can really benefit from a food plot, is because it's cheap to put in. I mean, theoretically, on a small parcel of ground like that, let's say he puts in a quarter acre or a couple quarter acre, like a half acre of plots worth, he's going to be into it for less than, the hunter's going to be into it for, less than maybe 50, 60 bucks. And the payoff is going to come during hunting season when these deer are frequenting his property far more than if it was just nothing, right? And so that's kind of why, for me, when I say yes, that's kind of my follow-up explanation is, it's cheap. Mm-hmm. How can you, kind of my tagline with stuff like that is, how can you, if you're serious about hunting and you're really wanting to get good quality deer coming through your place, how can you afford not to do a food plot? It's just, me, it's a no-brainer. There are people that'll say, well, and we'll get into this when we get into the how-to part, but, I don't own any tractors. I don't own any of this type of equipment. And, like I said, we'll get into that more later on, but there's ways that you can still get these things done for, minimal price and see a big difference in your hunting success and what you see. So,
when people talk to me, and I've said this many times, I'm not a farmer. I don't own any land. We've got a big farm that we do hunt, and he farms it, and there are some tricks, things that we're putting in. And one of the things that I've found is that trails to and trails from stands, old logging roads, old access roads for the farmers, because all his access roads are up and down and around, and he's got, fields set up along the topography. And so all those are opportunities for you to come in, ask the farmer, hey, can I put in a trail? I'll just say a trail mix, because I don't I don't know anything else to call it. It's a cover crop, but it also has, food, value in it. And even if you never plowed up the ground, if you look at your land and see the trails that have been there naturally or been there for hunting Wisconsin, so 40 years, the logging trail's been there, and it closes in, closes in, closes in. You just do some really simple stuff. That's a food plot to me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. Anytime you can get anything to grow that wasn't there naturally to get whatever you're doing, in this case, whitetail deer, to frequent it or to maybe stop by and to give you an advantage during the hunting season is definitely a food plot. And it could be less than we've got guys that plant 100-foot by 50-foot food plots, and they work perfectly. And, we talked about, 99.9% of the time that people ask us, would a food plot help on our land? And we say yes. And, the 0.1% that maybe we say no, because there's times that we do the pre-planning with guys and we go through land management and we look and we kind of decipher what's out there. And if the soil, I can't say this enough and stress it enough, but all soils aren't created equally. And if there are soils that there's no place on that 20-acre patch that food plot is going to take hold and flourish. A lot of times it'll germinate and get an inch tall to 2 inches tall, and then it starts running out of either water or nutrients, or gets too much direct sunlight. And so there's times that we say, no, there's something here that just won't be economical for you to have a food plot on here. There is also times where we look at the pre-planting stages of this and the discovery stages of looking at the land. And if there are guys that have, because let's be honest, corn and soybeans and alfalfa, monoculture stuff that people raise for a cash crop or for livestock is a food plot as well. And so if there are times where their land, and say you hunt a guy's property and you don't even lease it, but they let you hunt there, and you look at it and there are quote unquote food plots of corn and soybeans, because deer like them as well. If they're all set up in a good strategic location and all it takes you is to find that travel corridor, that's another time that we might say, you know what, you do have food plots out here. But as the land gets bigger and the areas get bigger, there's more land in between those fields. And that in between staging areas where deer, especially during rut, like to kind of step back and observe their surroundings before they go out to these big cornfields. And a lot of times they don't go out to the cornfields and bean fields till later. So as the land, it gets to be a bigger area. And what we try to do is if the land gets bigger and more expansive, there are times where we could put in a staging zone plot, like a brassica plot, that will funnel and centralize those deer. They'll feel safe coming out to those areas than getting out in the open of the cornfields earlier in the day. So you might have a shot prior to sundown at those deer. And so that's where we, can evaluate everything. So yes, there's times where we say no, that a food plot might not work, but 99% of the time, we're going to find something that's going to improve their odds of seeing or harvesting the deer.
And one example is one of the places where I hunt at north of town here. The person that's renting the land for farming right now is just mainly running their cattle on it, and they've got some alfalfa up on top. No corn, no soybeans there. The neighbor, however, that is hooked onto us, they got corn and had some soybeans in years past. And what I was starting to find was that the deer were wanting to just stay on their property. And for me, my thought was, what's a little food plot going to do? And just by putting in 2 1/8 acres, so a total of a 1/4 acre of plot on that property, changed things tremendously. Mm-hmm. Because what started happening now was before the deer were on a beeline from their bedding area to this guy's cornfield or bean field. And let's face it, corn and beans are good early in the season. Deer will eat the corn all the way into the fall and the winter. Don't get me wrong, but deer's pellet is still going to want something green. And when fall starts rolling in and the deer are on their way to these fields, they're swinging by my food plots to get a munch of greens before they even go out to the cornfield. And literally, what I've watched them do is they'd go through umpteen different places on the way to the field. And no matter where I put my stand, the deer were going on a different trail. By putting this 1/8-acre plot in this area, all of a sudden now the deer are coming through the trees to this central location, grabbing a bite to eat because they love the clovers, they love the brassicas. Because I like to mix a couple of our Rackology plots together, and then they're off to the to the field. And the good thing that does is you've hunted deer long enough, so this has probably happened to you as well as many of you guys that are listening. You're sitting in the tree stand, and if you've got something there that you don't want to get locked into the tree stand an hour after dark. That's what happens when these deer come in. Like guys that I know that they live in an area where they're allowed to bait. Those deer might stand on a bait pile you're stuck in the stand. You have to bust some deer to get out of there. With a food plot, they come through and they munch on what they need, and then they're out of there. You might have them there for 5-10 minutes. And so these small micro plots, whether you've got a big piece of ground or a small piece of ground, they work great to put in between the bedding area and the farmer's fields, because essentially you're funneling them into an area that's going to allow you for a shot.
Sounds like you're setting up an advertiser. The main course is a section away in Nebraska, it could be, or in Wisconsin, it's by yard. But all of a sudden, it's an appetizer. I like how you said it, their palate, because deer know what they need when they need it. They do better than we do, and that's one thing I've learned about observing whitetails. They'll tell you what they're going to eat when they're going to eat it. I've hunted elk, and I've seen elk eat mushrooms. Well, mushrooms are only around for a really short window of time, but if you get in on them, you can just get ahead of them. There's a lot of neat things, you can do just by observation. What are these critters eating? And then what you just described, we call kill plots, because you set up just a little stop place. You want that buck to stop, be looking, not a staging area per se, but he's looking where he's going next, but he's got some food. He's relaxed. He's not pressured. Nothing's happening. And, if it's Mr. Wonderful, then you got a shot on these kill plots, and they're small. And I learned this tip from a guy. He sets it up by the wind. He'll have kill plots, sets up stands, every single stand by the wind. He'll set up a kill plot. And, when people start taking it to that nth degree, then, they're really thinking, because any stand he sets, he knows what deer are there and the opportunity, and that's what we're looking for, is opportunity. During the rut, folks, all bets are sort of kind of off. I mean, they just are. Bucks need to eat, but they're not thinking about it. They're going to town and they're going to, sire some another generation. Yep. That's all they have. So, let's stay on this subject. When listeners, if you have questions about, should I have a food plot, just don't, should I grow a food plot, read a magazine, see a video on the Sportsman Channel and go, yeah, I'm going to build a food plot. Before you do that, call one of these guys. Call Rackology. Call my friends over Land and Legacy. Call them at, Grandpa Ray's. Call them, wherever you might want, to get some information, because they'll talk to you. They really will. We talked about this in the warm-up with the guys tonight, because they want to help you become a better, user of your land, a better hunter. And that's part. Jason, my gosh, he's a teacher. He's good at teaching people and sharing ideas and getting you started. Whether you buy somebody's product or not, at least have the smarts to go and ask some questions and get some input. Because a lot of people, I'm included, you write a check, or you put something on the credit card, and you hear something, oh, let's go do this. And my farmer buddies will look at me and go, you don't know what you're doing. Stop.
Yep.
And that's the truth. That's the truth.
And just like you said, we're here, we have a product, but we pride ourselves on, like we talked before, our willingness to help people, our knowledge that we've taken in so far, and the knowledge that we will be, like I said, it's an ever evolving deal. And so we try to stay abreast of all that might be coming up and new and exciting in the food plot realm. But we encourage people to call us. We encourage people to email us. They got questions and concerns. If do we have the right equipment? If we decide to go this way, am I going to set myself up for failure? Or what do I need to do so that doesn't happen? So that's what we're here for.
So who decides really in the end if a food plot is right for my 10 acres, 5 acres, 200 acres? In the end, who decides that?
Well, I think, it goes back to what we talked about the other night with land management, when we work with guys is, who ultimately decides is the landowner, the tenant, or the hunter, whatever the case may be. We obviously give our suggestions as far as, what you might want to do, what you should do, and they have to take it from there. But ultimately that's in their hands, but we give them the information to make the best. As a teacher, I look at it like you want to give kids the ability to make the best educated decision. We want to give, the hunters, the best knowledge to make the best educated decision. And so, whether it's a biology side or like, with the food plots and nutrition and growing times and all these other things. Eric, he's been an agronomist for I don't know how many years. He's an expert in the agronomy field. When you call or email us, depending on the question will depend on maybe which one of us two that you're really dealing with. But, when you're calling and talking about, what we need to do for soil sampling and what do we need to do for our, grow the best food plots on our land. And an agronomist that's what they do. It's land, it's soil health, plants, what to plant when, anything plant related. There's really nobody else out there to talk to about that other than an agronomist. And Eric would be the one that you'd be directly emailing or visiting with on that. So
what I've always said, it's the hunter, landlord, tenant, whoever's leasing it, it's their decision. But who makes a food plot successful? It's it feels like to us, the people that are doing it, whether it be the landlord putting the food plot in, but it seems like it's 90% blood, sweat, and tears and 10% luck. But I look at that and I say that's only about 10% of what determines a good food plot or not. The other 90% is Mother Nature. And that just kind of holds the key if that food plot's can be successful or not. Because we have had times in 2012 was the driest year in record that I remember here in central Nebraska. And let alone corn and soybeans on dry land, they weren't making it. We were sucking air for the pivots just to keep them running, to keep that stuff going to maturity on our row crop stuff. And the food plots, the cover crops, they all really suffered because a lot of it is not sub-irrigated, or they don't have any water, or it gets too hot for too long. And so Mother Nature definitely rules the roost when it comes to food plots and to keeping them alive and going. But the prep work that we do and that the land manager or whoever's putting the food plots in, that could be, the difference in the time you put into it and the way you think and where it's going to go. That's why I say it's successful, because we try to take Mother Nature out of it as much as possible to make sure we have a good food plot. So definitely it's another thing to consider. After a person makes a decision to do it, that there could be some uphill battles, but a lot of times out of all those years, 2012 was one of the worst years we've had, and ever since then it's been pretty good. So 1 year out of 10 years, Mother Nature's going to be somewhat decent to us.
Yeah, Eric, you alluded to this earlier about, your plan and listeners, if you're going to jump into this game and start developing, a really solid, 3 to 5 year plan for your land, for your deer, what you're going to feed them, where you're going to feed them, how you're going to feed them, when you're going to feed them. That's where it all comes back to this land management. And that's one of the reasons I started this, because I want everybody to realize that they can't afford for somebody to put some eyes, even if it's Google Earth or aerial photos. And that's not the best, okay? That's not the best. But sometimes at least some eyes on your land. The best thing is to have people like Eric and Jason come and walk your land, because that'll put you up and set you up. It could be for 20 years, depending on, what happens to your habitat. But having said that, before you even consider doing a food plot, figure out, why are you putting the food plot in, where you want to have the food plots, and why you're putting them there. Just like Jason said so aptly, he set up a little appetizer bar for bucks and does and between bedding and the main meal. but that's all it takes. And the guys that I know are setting up these kill plots, I mean, they're minute. I mean, they're just absolutely minute, and they're 365 around their stands, and then just, it's almost a throw and grow. They take a rake and do whatever they need to do, but they go in there, and it's just that hesitation. Wait a minute, this is food, okay, and I'm good. I'm going to take a munch, and so I just pause, so you don't have to go. You have to snort wheeze at them or grunt or whatever to try to hold them. They're just gonna naturally stop, and they're used to doing this. They really are. So there's a lot of intricacies about this deer hunting that have expand with food plots and land management. But if you're going to be a 365 hunter, which most of my listeners are, son of a gun, keep learning. And I guess that's what you tell your students all the time, don't you, Jason?
Yeah, that's what I tell myself all the time. Once you think you ever know it all, that's when you're done learning, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's it. So on this section, any more thoughts? We got a couple minutes before we're going to wrap up.
I think one last thing that I just kind of on my mind, which we'll get to in the next couple segments, is getting back to when we talk about whether or not we do a food plot, and the yes factor is, if I got a small area of land and let's say I can only put an eighth or a quarter of an acre down, they might mow it down by the time hunting season even comes around. And that's when, and again, we'll talk about how to do this better in the next couple segments, but that's when, don't be afraid, so to speak. You can fence those small micro plots off, keep them out of there, because they're still going to be going from their bedding to their fields, whether you have that plot there or not. And you can strategically time it to when you take those fences down, and it's kind of like now you open up the floodgates. It's a fresh meal for them, and it's now available, which even increases the draw to it that much more, because they know it's there, but they can't, they couldn't get to it. So guys that even have a very small piece of land can still have success with a food plot, if you incorporate, fencing it off and keeping those deer out. And you can do it. Again, you can still do that very cheaply. And again, we'll talk about that later on. That's just kind of one last key factor I want to throw in there is the whole yes thing. Because I can hear, because this was on my mind, okay, I can only put in a small plot. I've done that before, and the deer mowed it down. And, how do we keep that around? How do we time that for the hunting season? And we'll talk about that more, but that's kind of last.
And just to piggyback on what Jason said, we've had guys that actually put in like a half acre or a quarter acre, and they'll fence half of it off. So it keeps deer moving through there and knowing that there's something there to feed on. And I say it's hard to keep deer out of places. But we've had guys successfully put up, higher fences. I'm not talking metal fences, it's just, whether it be electric wire or whether it be poly tape wire, something that deer know they can't get in there. But then when they release those, all that fencing, and they know it's there, at least they're in a pattern knowing that deer's there, and then you give that stuff ample time. And knowing deer density on your property is huge, because if you plan an eighth of an acre plot and you've got a ton of deer out there, your density is just astronomically, or even on the high side, they are going to take that food plot, especially a spring planted plot, whether it be a spring planted brassica plot, down, and they're going to keep it trimmed down. Whereas, our plot 365 can handle the travel and the pressure and the constant grazing. But so there's times that when we talk about, is it yes, now you have a high density of deer, this is what we suggest you do, so again, you have success. Yep.
So folks, that's going to be a wrap of first section of food plot with Rackology. And hey guys, how do people get a hold of Rackology?
The best place is to go to our email, rackologyllc@gmail.com, or get on our webpage, rackology.org, and our phone numbers and our email address is also on there. And any social media, Facebook, Instagram, we're also on there.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap this up, and we'll be back with section number 2, and we're going to talk about what they are and what they're not when it comes to food plots with Rackology. Talk to you in a minute. Hey, folks, a special edition of Whitetail Roundup is coming. I've asked 3 companies, Land & Legacy, Rackology, and Grandpa Ray Outdoors, to be part of a series on land management and food plots. So the next few episodes, about 18 of them in fact, are going to be about either land management or food plots. Why? Because people have been asking me a lot of questions. So I went out and chatted with some guys, and Adam Keith and Matt Dye from Land and Legacy is joining the crew, and at Rackology, we have Jason Obermiller and Eric Fitzgerald. And rounding out the team is Grandpa Ray Outdoors with John O'Brien. Each of them is going to bring a different flavor on what is land management, what are food plots, why you need them, the pros and cons. So listen up to this next series, and I sure hope you like them. If you like them, let me know. If you don't like them, let me know what I can do better.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.